The siege of Haven Prime, the Kraxan battle fleet hung in the darkness of space like predators circling wounded prey. 38 warships formed a perfect sphere around Haven Prime, their hulls black as the void itself, broken only by the crimson glow of charging weapons. Inside the colony's command center, beings from 20 different worlds watched their death approach with mathematical precision. Commander Thalia Reeves stood at the tactical console, her weathered hand steady despite the chaos around her. She was the only human on Haven Prime, serving as a liaison officer between Earth and the Galactic Assembly. At 43, she'd seen enough battles to know when one was lost. This was lost before it began. The main view screen showed the colony's shield grid, once a brilliant blue dome, now flickering orange and red like a dying flame. Each Kraxan plasma burst stripped away another percentage point. They had maybe 6 hours before complete failure. After that, the bombardment would turn Haven Prime's 3 million inhabitants into vapor and memory. Ambassador Zelkith floated beside her, his translucent jellyfish-like form pulsing with distressed colors. The Medusi were peaceful beings, philosophers and artists who had founded Haven Prime as a cultural exchange center. They had never imagined their paradise world would become a battlefield. The Kraxan demand our complete surrender. Zelkith's voice resonated through his aqueous body. They want our quantum processors and the cultural database. Everything we've built here over 2 centuries. Thalia knew what that meant. The cultural database contained the collected art, music, literature, and history of 63 species. It was priceless, irreplaceable. The Kraxan would either sell it or destroy it, depending on their mood. What about evacuation ships? She asked, though she already knew the answer. The Kraxan destroyed them in the first wave, replied Security Chief Korvax, his rocky Petran form grinding with stress. 12 civilian transports. They didn't even give them time to power up their engines. The room fell silent except for the constant thunder of plasma strikes against their shields. Every being present understood the mathematics of their situation. 3 million souls, 0 escape routes, 6 hours until shield collapse. We should negotiate, Zelkith said finally. Perhaps if we cooperate, they will allow some of our people to leave. Thalia wanted to laugh, but it would have been cruel. The Medusi always believed in the good of others, even when staring into the face of evil. The Kraxan Empire didn't negotiate. They consumed. World after world had fallen to their expansion over the past decade, and the Galactic Assembly seemed powerless to stop them. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Urix from the sensor station, her insectoid eyes reflecting multiple images of her displays. "I'm detecting something unusual at the edge of the system." "Kraxan reinforcements?" Korvax asked. "Negative. I'm not sure. The readings are strange. Something is creating massive gravitational distortions about 14 light hours out." Thalia moved to look at the sensor data. The readings didn't make sense. The distortions were too large for any ship, too regular for a natural phenomenon. It looked almost like something was punching holes in space-time itself over and over, creating a chain of micro-wormholes. "Could be a sensor malfunction," she said, but something in her gut told her otherwise. "Commander Reeves." Zelkith turned to her, his form shimmering with desperate hope. "You're from Earth. Your people have a military fleet." "Could they?" "Earth is 47 light-years away," Thalia interrupted gently. "Even if they received our distress signal the moment we sent it, even if they dispatched ships immediately, they couldn't possibly arrive for weeks. The human fleet was small compared to other galactic powers. Humanity had only achieved faster-than-light travel 60 years ago. They had maybe 200 military vessels, most of them light cruisers and patrol boats, nothing that could stand against a Kraxan battle fleet." Another blast shook the station. Somewhere in the civilian sectors, children were crying, families huddled together in shelters that wouldn't protect them when the shields fell. Medical staff prepared for casualties that would never come, because the plasma bombardment would leave nothing but atoms. Incoming. "Transmission from the Kraxan flagship," announced the communication officer. The screen shifted to show Supreme Commander Vraxtor. If the devil had a child with a mantis, it might look something like a Kraxan. Vraxtor's compound eyes glowed with predatory satisfaction, his mandibles clicking in what passed for a smile among his kind. "Haven Prime." His voice was like grinding metal. "You have 4 hours to transfer all command codes and databases to our ships. Comply and we will make your deaths quick. Resist, and we will take what we want from your ashes, but not before we make you watch your children burn." The transmission cut off. Several of the younger officers were openly weeping. The Petron were grinding their rocky joints in anger. The Medusi had turned black with despair. Thalia stared at the tactical display, her mind racing. 4 hours. In her entire military career, she'd never felt so helpless. Earth had trained her for many scenarios, but not this. Not being trapped in a tin can while demons knocked at the door. The gravitational distortions are getting stronger. Irix reported, her voice barely a whisper. Whatever it is, it's moving toward us, Ed. This can't be right. What is it? Korvax demanded. If these readings are accurate, something is moving through folded space at nearly 300 times light speed. That's impossible. The stress would tear any ship apart. Thalia's heart skipped. 300 times light speed through fold space wasn't impossible. It was insane. It was suicidal. It was exactly the kind of thing a desperate human captain might try if the stakes were high enough. Can you identify the signature? She asked, trying to keep hope out of her voice. Working on it. Wait, I'm getting a transmission. It's heavily distorted, but it's on a human military frequency. The command center went silent. Every eye, compound or simple, turned to the communication station. The message was broken, scattered by the impossible speeds involved, but 5 words came through clear. Haven Prime. Hold on. Coming. Thalia felt tears threaten her composure. She didn't know which ship it was. She didn't know how they'd gotten here so fast. She didn't know how one human vessel could possibly make a difference against 38 Kraxan warships. But for the first time in hours, she felt something other than despair. How long until it arrives? She asked. Irix recalculated several times as if unable to believe her own numbers. At current velocity, 2 hours and 17 minutes, 2 hours. They had to hold for 2 more hours. Boost power to forward shields, Thalia ordered, surprising herself by taking command. No one questioned her. Pull everything from non-essential systems. Life support, gravity, even the lights if we have to. Every second counts now. Commander, Zelkith floated closer. One ship cannot fight 38. Thalia thought of every impossible battle humanity had ever fought. Thermopylae, Rorke's Drift, the Alamo. Sometimes one ship was enough. Not to win, but to change everything. You don't know humans very well. Ambassador, she said. We have a saying on Earth. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog. The translator struggled with the idiom, but the meaning came through. Around the command center, beings began returning to their posts with renewed energy. They still faced impossible odds, but impossible was better than hopeless. Outside, the Kraxan continued their bombardment, unaware that their sensors hadn't detected the approaching threat. The gravitational distortions were so severe that they masked the ship's actual signature. It was like trying to spot a bullet by the sonic boom it created. By the time you heard it, it was already too late. In the depths of space, something howled toward them through dimensions that shouldn't exist, pushed by engines running so hot they were seconds from melting, guided by a human captain who had decided that 3 million lives were worth more than one ship and her crew. The Howling Wolf, the TCS Howling Wolf, exploded out of fold space like a demon birthed from hell itself. The destroyer materialized less than 10,000 kilometers from the Kraxan formation, moving at velocities that shouldn't exist in normal space. Her hull glowed white-hot from the friction of her passage, her engines screaming in protest as Captain Marcus Chen pushed them past every safety limit humanity had ever established. All weapons, fire everything, Chen roared, gripping his command chair as G-forces tried to tear him apart. The Howling Wolf was small compared to the Kraxan dreadnoughts, a mosquito attacking elephants, but she was a human mosquito, armed with nuclear stingers and crewed by people who had thrown away the rulebook 3 days ago when they'd received Haven Prime's distress call. 48 torpedo tubes opened like hungry mouths. Nuclear-tipped missiles, each carrying 50 megatons of compressed fury, streaked toward the enemy fleet. The Wolf's particle beam cannons, all 6 of them, carved lines of destruction across space. Her railguns fired depleted uranium rounds at significant fractions of light speed. The Kraxan fleet, caught completely off guard, took 3 seconds to react. In space combat, 3 seconds was an eternity. 2 dreadnoughts vanished in nuclear fire before they could raise their shields. A third took a railgun round through its main reactor and began venting atmosphere and crew into the void. Evasive pattern Omega, Chen ordered. Random walk maximum burn. The howling wolf danced through space like her namesake, dodging hunters. No computer could predict her path because even her pilot didn't know where they'd be in the next second. It was pure chaos, pure human instinct, and it was keeping them alive. Inside Haven Prime's command center, Thalia watched in amazement as one small human ship turned a methodical siege into absolute pandemonium. The Kraxen, so used to their enemies following predictable patterns, couldn't adapt to the wolf's insanity. "They're breaking formation," Korvax reported, his voice filled with disbelief. The Kraxen are actually breaking formation. It was true. The perfect sphere that had trapped Haven Prime was dissolving, as Kraxen ships maneuvered to engage the unexpected threat. Some fired on the wolf, their plasma beams crossing each other in a deadly lattice. Others held position, unsure whether to maintain the siege or join the battle. Supreme Commander Vraxtor's voice erupted over open channels. "All ships destroy that human vessel. All weapons concentrate fire." 35 Kraxen warships turned their attention to one human destroyer. It should have been over in seconds. The howling wolf should have been vaporized. Should have been nothing but expanding gas and regret. Should have, but wasn't. Chen had studied the Kraxen for years. He knew their doctrine, their tactics, their psychology. They were predators who relied on fear and overwhelming force. They assumed their enemies would either flee or stand and fight traditionally. No one in their 1,000-year history had ever done what the howling wolf did next. "Engineering, override all safety protocols," Chen commanded. "Prepare for ramming speed." His bridge crew didn't hesitate. They were all volunteers, all people who had decided that some things were worth dying for. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Walsh at weapons, Commander Jorge Martinez at the helm, Dr. Lisa Park keeping them all conscious despite the crushing G-forces. They had come here to save 3 million lives, and if that meant giving their own, the price was acceptable. The howling wolf turned toward the nearest Kraxen dreadnought and accelerated. Her engines, already pushed beyond their limits, screamed in protest. Temperature warnings flashed red across every console. The structural integrity field fluctuated wildly. "Hull temperature critical," Walsh reported calmly. "We're literally melting, sir." "Let her melt," Chen replied. "We only need to hold together for another 30 seconds. The Kraxon dreadnought, the Extinction's hand, tried to evade. But it was built for intimidation, not agility. The howling wolf struck it amidships at 40% the speed of light. The impact was visible from Haven Prime's surface. A new star bloomed in their sky as two ships became one expanding ball of plasma. The shockwave rippled outward, damaging 3 nearby Kraxen vessels and completely destroying a 4th. For a moment, space was silent. Then Thalia heard something she'd never forget: cheering. The command center erupted in celebration, then just as quickly fell quiet. They had lost the ship that came to save them. "Wait," Erix called out. "I'm detecting... This is impossible." On the tactical display, a small signature emerged from the expanding debris field. An escape pod, somehow launched in the millisecond before impact, carrying 5 human crew members, including Captain Chen. The pod was damaged, venting atmosphere, tumbling wildly through space, but it was there. "All defensive weapons protect that pod," Thalia commanded. Haven Prime's few defensive guns, normally useless against capital ships, could at least swat fighters that might pursue the survivors. But the Kraxen weren't pursuing. They were retreating. The destruction of the Extinction's hand had broken something in the Kraxen psychology. They were used to being the predators, the ones who brought fear. They had never faced an enemy willing to turn their own ship into a weapon. If one human ship could do this, what would 10 do? Or 100? Supreme Commander Vraxtor's voice came over the communications, but it lacked its earlier confidence. "All ships, tactical withdrawal. Regroup at the edge of the system." The Kraxen fleet pulled back, their formation ragged, leaving their dead burning in space. They had come with 38 ships. They were leaving with 33, and one of those was severely damaged. All because of one human destroyer whose captain had decided that conventional warfare was for people who intended to survive. "They're leaving," Zelkith said, his form cycling through colors of disbelief. "They're actually leaving." "Get rescue shuttles to that pod," Thalia ordered. "And send a message to Earth. Tell them the howling wolf saved 3 million lives today." 6 hours later, Captain Marcus Chen stood in Haven Prime's medical bay, his left arm in a sling, burns covering 30% of his body. He looked like hell, but he was smiling as Ambassador Zelkith approached. "Captain?" The Medusa's form shimmered with what Thalia had learned was deep respect. "The Galactic Assembly will want to censure you for violating every safety protocol in the Navigation Codex." "Probably," Chen agreed. "They'll say what you did was impossible, insane, that no rational being would attempt it." "Definitely." Zelkith's form shifted to a color Thalia had never seen before. "They'll also say you're heroes. That one human ship changed the course of the war." The Kraxan Empire sent a message to all their fleets. They're classifying humanity as a Class X threat, to be avoided unless they have overwhelming numerical superiority. Chen laughed, then winced as it pulled at his burns. "We scared them that badly?" "Captain," Zelkith said, "you turned your ship into a weapon and smiled while doing it. You violated the laws of physics through pure determination. You saved 3 million lives with 5 crew members and a destroyer held together by prayer and duct tape. Yes, you scared them. You scared all of us. But," the ambassador continued, "you also inspired us. The Assembly is voting to accept Earth's proposal for a mutual defense pact. Any attack on one member will be considered an attack on all. It seems the galaxy has decided that having humans as enemies is too terrifying to contemplate." Later, as Chen looked out at the stars from Haven Prime's observation deck, Thalia joined him. "That was insane," she said. "You know that, right?" "Sanity is overrated," Chen replied. "Besides, we're humans. Insanity is kind of our thing." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, the Kraxan Empire was reconsidering its expansion plans. Somewhere else, the Galactic Assembly was learning that humans, despite being newcomers to the galactic stage, had something unique to offer. The willingness to look at impossible odds and ask, "But what if we try anyway?" The howling wolf was gone, but her legacy would echo through the stars. When the beings of Haven Prime told their children about this day, they would say, "We thought no aid was coming." Then a human warship came howling from the void, and everything changed. And in the annals of galactic history, it would be remembered as the day humanity announced itself not through diplomacy or trade, but through sheer, impossible, beautiful human madness. The day one ship and 5 crew members made an empire of thousands of worlds step back and reconsider. The day humanity said, "Yeah, we're new here. Got a problem with that?"